Okay, welcome back, everyone. Today we are diving into something pretty wild, I think.
Yeah.
It's November 2024.
Crazy.
Donald Trump just
Yeah.
won a second term as president.
Wow.
And we're looking at the team, his cabinet picks, as reported by PBS NewsHour. And they've pulled in some video clips
Oh, very cool.
to give us more context
Yeah.
on some of these choices. So are you ready to unpack this lineup? Figure out who these people are, what their appointments could mean, and what potential controversies they bring to the table.
Yeah, it's a real mix of familiar faces and some new ones that definitely raise some eyebrows.
Right. Okay, let's just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Treasury Secretary,
Mm-hmm.
the person who's steering the economic ship. Trump's pick is Scott Bessent,
Okay.
a hedge fund CEO. And here's where it gets interesting. Former employee of George Soros.
Mm.
What kind of signal does that send?
Well, his background is certainly intriguing. His experience in finance is undeniable, but that connection to Soros, prominent figure, opposite end of the political spectrum, it definitely adds a layer of complexity.
Right.
It's worth noting that Bessent is known for his advocacy for tax cuts
Okay.
and deregulation, which aligns with traditional Republican economic thinking.
So maybe we'll see a blend of Wall Street savvy
Yeah.
and classic GOP economic policy.
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
I guess.
Guess. Now let's move on to the person who will be the face of American diplomacy on the world stage.
Right.
The Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And Trump has chosen Marco Rubio,
Right.
the senator from Florida who once ran against Trump
Yeah.
for president. That's a plot twist I did not see coming.
Yeah, it's a fascinating journey from
Yeah.
Trump critic to supporter.
Absolutely.
He's known for his hawkish views on foreign policy, particularly regarding China, and a strong supporter of Israel. So his appointment could signal a continuation of Trump's more assertive foreign policy. But here's a catch. Rubio has also called for a negotiated end to the war in Ukraine, which suggests that he might take a different approach to that specific conflict.
Right.
So it'll be fascinating to see how he balances those potentially conflicting viewpoints.
Talk about a balancing act.
Oh.
Now let's turn to the Director of National Intelligence. Critical role, especially in today's world. Trump's choice here has raised quite a few eyebrows. Tulsi Gabbard, remember her? She was a Democratic congresswoman who ran for president in 2020 and is now a vocal Trump supporter.
Yeah, very, very unique political evolution. She's become a sharp critic of the Biden administration and adopted many conservative positions. However, what's raising concerns are her statements regarding Russia. Some view them as echoing Kremlin propaganda, which raises questions about how she might approach intelligence gathering and analysis related to Russia.
Okay, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Moving on to Department of Defense, where Trump has nominated Pete Hegseth, a Fox News personality and former military officer, as Secretary of Defense. This pick seems to be generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah, his selection has definitely stirred things up. He's been a vocal opponent of diversity initiatives within the military and has voiced his opposition to women serving in combat roles.
Right.
These stances have sparked a lot of debate about his vision for the military and what impact he might have on its culture and readiness.
Yeah, it sounds like his appointment could be a significant departure from the current direction of the military. All right, let's move on to the Attorney General, the top law enforcement official in the country. Trump's initial pick, Matt Gaetz, withdrew amid some serious allegations.
Right.
So stepping into the role is a familiar face. Pam Bondi,
Oh, okay.
the former Florida Attorney General, and a staunch defender of Trump.
She's a known quantity in Trump's circle for sure,
Yeah.
part of his defense team during his first impeachment, and consistently aligned herself with his agenda. So this suggests that we might see a continuation of Trump's approach to law enforcement with a focus on issues like immigration and a tough-on-crime stance.
Okay, so potentially more of the same on the law enforcement front. Now let's talk labor. Secretary of Labor, Trump has chosen Lori Chavez-Diermer,
Okay.
who recently lost her re-election bid for Congress in Oregon.
Interesting.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, while she's a Republican, she's known for her support of the PRO Act, which aims to strengthen unions.
Yeah.
This stance could create some friction within the Republican Party,
Right.
which has traditionally been less supportive of unions. It'll be interesting to see how she navigates that potential conflict.
It seems like she might be a bit of a wild card
A little bit.
in this cabinet.
Yep.
Next up is the Commerce Department, and Trump's pick is Howard Lutnick, a billionaire businessman
Okay.
and the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald.
Lutnick's a longtime ally of Trump, played a role in his 2016 transition team. strong advocate for Trump's America First economic policies, and has emphasized job creation as a top priority. So his appointment suggests continued focus on trade deals that prioritize American businesses,
Okay.
and a continuation of Trump's economic nationalism.
So potentially more trade battles on the horizon. Now let's turn to Homeland Security, a department that's central to Trump's focus on immigration. His nominee for secretary is Kristi Noem,
Right.
the current governor of South Dakota.
Another staunch Trump loyalist, has taken a hard line on immigration. As governor, she deployed National Guard troops to the southern border and implemented strict immigration policies in South Dakota. So her appointment suggests we might see an intensification of Trump's border security agenda and potentially more aggressive enforcement action.
Okay, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Next, we have the CIA director, a position that demands a deep understanding of intelligence gathering. And Trump has chosen a familiar name, John Ratcliffe.
Oh, wow.
He actually served as director of national intelligence during Trump's first term.
Yeah,
So Ratcliffe's return to the intelligence community is noteworthy.
it is.
He faced bipartisan criticism during his previous confirmation process, with concerns raised about his qualifications and the potential for politicization of intelligence under his leadership.
Right.
So his reappointment raises questions about the direction of the intelligence community under a second Trump term.
For sure.
It sounds like his nomination could be a contentious one. Now let's move on to a department that's been in the spotlight a lot lately, Health and Human Services. Trump's nominee here has sparked a lot of controversy. Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. He ran for president this year and is known for promoting views on vaccines that go against mainstream science.
Yeah, this is raising serious alarms among public health experts. He's promoted claims about vaccines that have been debunked by scientific research, and his questioning of established public health practices raises concerns about how he might approach critical health issues.
His nomination certainly throws a wrench into the mix. Okay, let's move on to the Department of Agriculture. Trump has picked Brooke Rollins for secretary, who served as his domestic policy advisor during his first term.
Okay, another returning figure. Yeah.
From Trump's inner circle. This appointment suggests we might see a continuation of Trump's focus on deregulation. In the agricultural sector, support for large-scale farming operations, and an emphasis on trade negotiations related to agriculture. It remains to be seen how she might address issues like food security and the impact of climate change on agriculture.
Right. From farms to freeways, we arrive at the Department of Transportation. Trump's choice for secretary is Sean Duffy, a former congressman from Wisconsin.
Duffy's an interesting pick, former reality TV star, which makes his background somewhat unconventional for this role.
Right.
However, he's been a vocal supporter of Trump's infrastructure plans, which could be a major focus in his second term. It'll be interesting to see how Duffy's experience translates to leading a complex department like transportation.
So maybe a reality show about infrastructure is in our future. Next up is the Veterans Affairs Department, which is responsible for the health and well-being of those who have served our country. For secretary, Trump has chosen Doug Collins, a former congressman and military chaplain.
So Collins' background as a chaplain and his service in the military giving a personal understanding of the challenges veterans face. However, his political career has been marked by strong partisanship and loyalty to Trump,
Right.
which raises questions about his ability to lead a department that requires nonpartisan leadership and a focus on the needs of veterans above political considerations.
For sure.
It sounds like his leadership style might face some scrutiny. All right, let's turn to a department that manages vast swaths of our nation's land and resources, the Interior Department.
Here.
Trump's pick is Doug Burgum, the current governor of North Dakota.
Burgum's known for his support of oil and gas drilling and his emphasis on energy production.
Okay.
So his appointment suggests a continuation of Trump's policies promoting fossil fuels and potentially scaling back environmental regulations. The question is how he'll balance these priorities with the department's other responsibilities, like managing national parks and tribal lands.
Yeah, it seems like his appointment could have significant implications for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the Energy Department, Trump has tapped Chris Wright, the CEO of Liberty Energy, to be Energy Secretary.
Wright is a prominent figure in the energy industry, particularly in the realm of fracking. He's also been a vocal critic of efforts to combat climate change. So this appointment signals a potential shift away from renewable energy and a renewed focus on fossil fuels, aligning with Trump's overall energy agenda.
So it seems like a double down on fossil fuels. Now let's turn our attention to a department that affects millions of students and educators across the country, the Department of Education. And Trump has made a choice that's raising eyebrows. Linda McMahon,
Oh, wow.
who headed the Small Business Administration during his first term.
So McMahon's appointment has surprised many, given her lack of experience in the education sector. Her background is primarily in business and entertainment as the former CEO of WWE.
Right.
While she served briefly on Connecticut's Board of Education, it's unclear what her priorities for education might be. Her past support for school choice programs, however, suggests a potential focus on expanding charter schools and voucher programs.
It's definitely an unexpected choice. All right. Let's move on to the Environmental Protection Agency, a department that's seen a lot of deregulation under Trump's first term. For administrator, he's chosen Lee Zeldin,
Okay.
a former congressman from New York.
Zeldin is another staunch Trump ally and has a history of opposing environmental regulations. He's criticized efforts to address climate change and has advocated for expanding fossil fuel production. So his appointment suggests a continuation of the Trump administration's rollback of environmental protections and a skeptical stance toward climate science.
Okay, so potentially more deregulation on the environmental front. Next up is Housing and Urban Development, which is tasked with addressing housing needs and combating discrimination. For secretary, Trump has chosen Scott Turner,
Right.
a former NFL player and pastor.
So Turner's background in faith and sports is unique for this role. He previously served as the executive director of the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. But his appointment raises questions about his understanding of the complex issues surrounding housing and his ability to lead a large federal agency.
His appointment certainly stands out. And to wrap up our initial look at Trump's cabinet picks, he's created a brand new position,
Oh.
the National Energy Council, which will be chaired by none other than Doug Burgum,
Okay.
the designated Interior Secretary.
Wow.
What's the significance of this new council?
Well, this creation of this council, it centralizes decision-making related to energy policy.
Right.
With Wright at the helm of the Energy Department and Burgum leading this council, it seems clear that fossil fuels will be a dominant focus in Trump's second term. It also raises questions about the administration's approach to climate change.
Wow, this is a lot to take in.
It is.
It's certainly shaping up to be an interesting second term for Trump.
For sure. Yeah, it's fascinating how this new council, potentially amplifies that focus on energy production, particularly from fossil fuels. With Wright leading the Energy Department and Burgum chairing this new council, it seems to signal a clear direction.
Yeah. It's striking, just going through this list, how many of these picks have sparked controversy, even before they've stepped into their roles.
Yeah.
From Hegseth's stance on diversity in the military to Kennedy's views on vaccines, it seems like Trump is really drawn to figures who challenge conventional thinking. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a pattern that's hard to ignore. It seems Trump is once again surrounding himself with individuals who share his worldview and aren't afraid to shake things up.
Right.
It raises questions about how this group will work together and what kind of impact they'll have on the political landscape.
So if we try to connect the dots here,
Yeah.
what does this cabinet lineup tell us about the potential direction of Trump's second term? Is it more the same, or are we in for some major shifts?
Yeah. It's still early, but based on this lineup, it seems likely we'll see a continuation of many of the themes from Trump's first term.
Okay.
Deregulation, tax cuts, a hardline stance on immigration, and a more assertive foreign policy. But with some new faces and personalities in the mix, there's also the potential for some unexpected twists and turns.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. Let's start with the economy.
Yeah.
What can we glean from these appointments of Besant at Treasury and Lutnick at Commerce?
Well, with Besant, we might see a mix of that Wall Street experience and those traditional Republican economic policies. He's advocated for tax cuts and deregulation, which could stimulate economic growth, but also might exacerbate income inequality.
Right.
Lutnick at Commerce is likely to prioritize trade deals that benefit American businesses, which could lead to more trade tensions with other countries.
Now, what about foreign policy? Rubio at State and Gabbard as D&I. That's an intriguing combination.
Yeah.
What direction might they steer U.S. foreign policy in?
Well, Rubio's, hawkish views suggest a continuation of Trump's more confrontational approach, particularly towards China.
Right.
His support for Israel also aligns with Trump's policies in the Middle East. However, Rubio's call for a negotiated settlement in Ukraine might signal a departure from Trump's previous stance. Gabbard's appointment as DNI is more of a wild card.
Yeah.
Her pro-Russia statements have raised concerns about how she'll handle intelligence related to Russia. So that's a dynamic that'll be really closely watched.
Shifting gears to domestic policy, what are some of the key areas to watch with this cabinet lineup?
Well, Hegseth defense could usher in some significant changes in military culture.
Okay.
His opposition to diversity initiatives and women in combat roles suggests a potential shift toward more traditional values and a potential rollback of some of the progress made in recent years.
Okay.
Noam at Homeland Security points towards a continuation, if not an intensification, of Trump's immigration policies with a focus on border security and increased enforcement.
And then there's Kennedy at Health and Human Services. His views on vaccines and public health have generated a lot of concern.
Yeah.
What are the potential implications of his appointment?
His appointment is particularly worrisome for public health experts.
Right.
His promotion of misinformation about vaccines could have a detrimental impact on public health.
Right.
It's crucial to remember that vaccines are one of the most effective public health interventions in history, saving millions of lives and preventing countless illnesses. So Kennedy's skepticism toward vaccines raises questions about how he'll approach critical public health issues,
Right.
especially during a time when global health threats like pandemics are a major concern.
Okay, so we've got a mixed bag here with some potential for a continuation of Trump's first-term policies, some hints of potential shifts, and a whole lot of uncertainty. What stands out to you as the most crucial aspect of this cabinet lineup?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this cabinet reflects a consolidation of power around Trump's core beliefs and priorities. The number of loyalists and returning figures suggests a doubling down on his approach to governing. It remains to be seen whether this will lead to greater effectiveness or simply amplify existing divisions.
So what does all of this mean for the average American? How might these cabinet picks actually impact their lives?
It's too early to say for sure, but there are some potential areas of concern. We could see changes in healthcare policy that make it more difficult to access affordable coverage. Environmental regulations could be further rolled back, impacting air and water quality. And the potential for heightened economic and geopolitical instability is certainly there with this lineup.
So a lot to watch.
Yeah.
A lot of potential impact. What should people be paying attention to as Trump's second term unfolds? What are the key indicators that things might be moving in a particular direction?
Well, it's important to stay informed about policy changes
Right.
and their potential consequences. Keep an eye on healthcare, education, environmental regulations, and economic policies. Pay attention to how these issues are being debated and what actions are being taken.
As we're discussing all of this, I keep thinking back to that point about Trump's reliance on loyalists. It seems that he's valuing loyalty over experience and expertise in many of these picks. Is that a sustainable approach to governing?
It's a question that's been raised throughout Trump's political career. While loyalty is undoubtedly important, it shouldn't come at the expense of competence and qualification. The individuals leading these crucial agencies should possess the necessary expertise, integrity, and commitment to public service to effectively serve the American people.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what does it say about the state of American politics?
Well, this cabinet selection reflects the deep polarization and ideological divides that we're seeing in American society.
Yeah.
It also raises questions about the balance between loyalty and competence in political appointments, and it highlights the importance of robust public discourse and informed civic engagement to ensure that our government functions effectively and serves the interests of all Americans.
Okay, we've laid out the broad strokes, but now let's zoom in on some of the specific controversies surrounding these nominees. What are some of the most pressing concerns that have been raised?
Well, one of the most prominent controversies involves Pete Hegseth, the nominee for defense secretary. He's been accused of sexual assault, although no charges were ever filed. So this is a serious allegation that raises questions about his character and judgment.
That's a significant issue. What do we know about the specifics of the allegations against him?
Well, the alleged incident occurred in 2017 when Hegseth was working at Fox News. A female colleague accused him of inappropriate touching and unwanted advances. Hegseth has denied the allegations, but reportedly reached a settlement with the accuser.
It's concerning that he would settle if he truly believed he was innocent. What does that suggest?
Well, settlements are often made to avoid lengthy and costly legal battles, but they can also be interpreted as an admission of guilt. In Hegseth's case, the details of the settlement remain confidential, so it's difficult to draw definitive conclusions. However, the fact that a settlement was reached raises legitimate questions that will likely be scrutinized during his confirmation process.
And these allegations aren't the only controversies surrounding Hegseth. His comments about diversity in the military have also sparked debate.
Yeah.
What's the core of that controversy?
Well, Hegseth has been a vocal critic of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the armed forces.
Right.
He's argued that such efforts are woke and undermine military readiness. This perspective has drawn sharp criticism from those who believe that diversity is essential for a strong and effective military. They argue that a diverse force brings a wider range of perspectives, experiences, and skills, which are vital for problem solving, innovation, and leadership in a complex and ever-changing world.
So there's a fundamental disagreement about the role of diversity in the military and whether it enhances or detracts from military effectiveness.
Mm.
Okay, let's move on to another controversial pick. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nominee for Health and Human Services Secretary. Why is his appointment causing such an uproar?
Kennedy's history of promoting misinformation about vaccines is deeply troubling to public health experts. He's repeatedly made claims linking vaccines to autism and other health problems despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary. So the concern is that his platform as HHS secretary will give him a wider audience for these harmful views, potentially eroding public trust in vaccines and jeopardizing public health.
And his stance on vaccines seems to run counter to decades of scientific research and the consensus within the medical community. What's particularly perplexing is that he comes from a family with a legacy of supporting scientific advancement.
Yeah.
His uncle, President John F. Kennedy, was a champion of public health initiatives like the effort to eradicate polio.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s embrace of anti-vaccine rhetoric deviates sharply from his family's commitment to science and public health.
Right.
So his appointment raises questions about whether the administration is prioritizing scientific evidence and public health expertise in its decision-making.
Okay, let's shift gears to another controversial pick. Kristi Noem, the nominee for Homeland Security Secretary. What are the specific concerns surrounding her nomination?
Well, Noem is known for her hardline stance on immigration.
Right.
As governor of South Dakota, she deployed National Guard troops to the southern border and implemented strict immigration policies within her state. So her critics argue that her approach is based on fear-mongering rather than a nuanced understanding of the complexities of immigration.
Okay.
They point to research and data that debunks many of the claims she has made about the negative impacts of undocumented immigrants.
So there's a debate about whether her approach to immigration is rooted in evidence-based policy or more driven by political rhetoric. It seems like a complex issue with no easy answers.
Okay.
Let's turn our attention to John Ratcliffe, who's been tapped to return to the intelligence community as CIA director. What are the main concerns about his reappointment?
Ratcliffe's previous stint as Director of National Intelligence was marked by concerns about his partisanship and his willingness to politicize intelligence. He faced criticism for downplaying the threat posed by Russia and promoting narratives that aligned with Trump's political agenda. So his reappointment raises questions about whether he will uphold the intelligence community's commitment to providing objective and nonpartisan assessments, or whether he'll prioritize loyalty to Trump over the integrity of intelligence analysis.
Right. The intelligence community plays a vital role in informing policymakers and safeguarding national security. It's crucial that their work is free from political interference and based on solid evidence and analysis. Let's move on to Linda McMahon, who's been nominated to lead the Department of Education. What are the primary concerns about her qualifications for this role?
Well, McMahon's lack of experience in the education sector has raised eyebrows. Her background is primarily in business and entertainment, having served as the former CEO of WWE. While she briefly served on Connecticut's Board of Education, this experience pales in comparison to the vast responsibilities of leading a federal agency as large and complex as the Department of Education. So critics argue that her appointment is more about her loyalty to Trump and her fundraising abilities than her qualifications for the job.
It's interesting that Trump has chosen someone with such an unconventional background for this role. It raises questions about what he prioritizes in filling cabinet positions.
Okay.
Let's wrap up our discussion of controversial picks by focusing on Lee Zeldin, the nominee for EPA administrator. What are the key concerns about his appointment?
Well, Zeldin is a staunch Trump ally and has a long history of opposing environmental regulations. He's been a vocal critic of efforts to address climate change and has advocated for expanding fossil fuel production. So his appointment is seen as a signal that the Trump administration will continue its rollback of environmental protections and its skepticism towards climate science. This is particularly alarming to environmental advocates who believe that urgent action is needed to mitigate the impacts of climate change.
So there's a stark contrast between Zeldin's views and those who believe that climate change is an existential threat requiring immediate action. It seems like his appointment will further fuel the debate over environmental policy. As we've been delving into these controversies, it's become clear that these cabinet picks represent more than just individual appointments. They reflect a set of values and priorities that will shape the direction of Trump's second term.
Absolutely. These appointments signal a continuation and potentially an escalation of many of the trends we saw in Trump's first term. A prioritization of loyalty over expertise, a disregard for science and evidence-based policymaking, and a willingness to prioritize political expediency over the common good.
Yeah. It's a sobering thought. It underscores the importance of staying informed, engaging in critical thinking, and holding our leaders accountable. We need to be vigilant in safeguarding democratic norms and ensuring that our government serves the best interests of all Americans.
I couldn't agree more. The future of our democracy depends on it.
We've talked about a lot of potential red flags, but is there anyone in this cabinet lineup who might surprise us? Someone who could bring a fresh perspective or challenge expectations?
You know, one nominee who stands out is Lori Chavez DeRemer, the pick for Labor Secretary.
Right.
She's a Republican, but she's broken from party lines in her support for the PRO Act, a bill that would strengthen unions.
That is surprising, given the GOP's traditional stance on unions. What's behind her support for this legislation?
Well, Chavez DeRemer has argued that strong unions can lead to higher wages and better working conditions for employees. She also sees them as a way to create a more balanced relationship between workers and management. It's a perspective that aligns more closely with Democrats than with many in her own party.
It'll be interesting to see how she navigates those potentially conflicting viewpoints within a Trump administration. Speaking of interesting dynamics, it's hard to ignore how many familiar faces we see in this cabinet lineup. It seems like Trump is really doubling down on his inner circle from his first term.
Yeah, it's a pattern that's been noted by many observers. And, this reliance on loyalists raises questions about whether Trump is open to new ideas and diverse perspectives, or whether he's primarily focused on surrounding himself with people who reinforce his existing views.
And with several of these picks facing controversies and lacking relevant experience, it makes you wonder what factors Trump prioritized in making these selections.
Yeah, it's a valid question. While loyalty is an important quality in any team, it shouldn't be the sole determining factor in cabinet appointments. These are positions that require significant expertise, integrity, and a deep commitment to public service. The individuals chosen for these roles should be capable of leading complex agencies and making decisions that serve the best interests of all Americans, not just a select few.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Trump's second-term cabinet picks, what's the most important takeaway you want our listeners to consider?
I think the key takeaway is this. This cabinet lineup is a reflection of Trump's vision for his second term. It suggests a continuation of many of his core priorities and governing style, and it also underscores the importance of staying informed, engaging in critical thinking, and holding our leaders accountable. The choices made by those in power have a direct impact on all of us, and it's crucial that we understand the potential consequences of those choices.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. We've explored the backgrounds, potential controversies, and policy implications of Trump's cabinet picks. And it's clear that this group will shape the direction of his second term and have a lasting impact on the country.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The real test will be how these individuals perform in their roles and what concrete actions they take. It's up to all of us to stay engaged, ask tough questions, and hold our leaders accountable for the decisions they make.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and informative. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics, stay engaged with the news, and form your own conclusions about what the future holds.